My name is Nemo. I'm here in front of the Lido Alliance, which I will talk a bit more later after the lunch break. And today with me, I have Mitya from the Drop team. So before we start diving deep into what you guys are thinking of a lot of different things that are happening in the industry, can you tell us maybe a bit more about yourself and then also about the Drop?
1, 2, 3. Yeah. Thanks for having me, first of all. My name is Mitya. I'm a co-founder of Drop. Speaking about myself, I've been in crypto for 3 years. Yes, I spent most of my time with P2P.org, validator. I was there on the product side, was super lucky to meet Konstantin and Vasily earlier on. So I think it's important to get into crypto from the right side of the industry, let's say, and I was super lucky in this regard. So I've been building actually a lot for Ethereum when P2P kind of realized, okay, that's a huge market, and the only thing that P2P did for Ethereum was running nodes for Lido at that point. So then we built kind of our own product suite for Ethereum at P2P. And having said that, actually Cosmos, what was called Cosmos at that point, was the first ecosystem that I really started studying in crypto, and I always was super excited about it. So I really wanted to focus on this full time, and I knew the guys from Neutron really well, obviously. So as they were also incubated by P2P, and we saw this opportunity of launching a liquid staking protocol that would be working in a close partnership with Neutron and DeFi protocols on Neutron, and so that's what we started building earlier this year, and Drop is a liquid staking protocol for the Interchain, backed by Lido, deployed as an integrated app on Neutron. It's been live for a couple of months already. Atom was our first asset that we launched. We'll launch in Celestia. The next asset next week, in fact, and many more to come. So that's a kind of quick background.
Nice. Let's then start with, can you tell us a bit more about Interchain? So maybe for some people, kind of like a speed run LE5.
Yeah, who knows what's Interchain? Okay, not too many. All right. So what we call Interchain is maybe it's slightly vague, but there is like a very overlapping, let's say, parts of Venn diagram. So if you think of all the chains that are using IBC as a connectivity protocol, chains that are using some parts of Cosmos SDK and/or Commit BFT consensus layer, then you're kind of thinking about this interesting category of starting from Cosmos Hub as kind of an OG chain, Celestia and the whole Celestia ecosystem, including rollups, then Initia that is launching soon as a subset of Celestia ecosystem. And then it kind of goes into some projects that are not really calling themselves maybe part of Cosmos or whatever, but in fact, Chain is using parts of this stack also, although they're not IBC connected necessarily. XLR actually is they were just on stage, so they are and the Cosmos SDK based chain. And many others, in fact, are using some parts of this stack. So that's a pretty interesting and huge space, much bigger than many people realize, in fact.
Okay, and let's go here. So, what is in your opinion, the main, what are the differences between the liquid staking market on the Ethereum and the Interchain?
Yeah, so they're completely different. So in the Interchain, if you look at Celestia or Cosmos Hub, first of all, the staking ratio overall, not talking about liquid staking, just native staking ratio is huge. So on Celestia, it was around 70%, I guess still around 70% now. Cosmos Hub historically was around 60-65%. So for the holders of these assets, staking is a pretty natural thing to do, and it's super easy to do. There's one very important reason why the staking ratio is so high is because typically they have high inflation rate, so the staking APRs are pretty high as well. But if you're not staking, you're kind of exposed to this inflation. If you're staking, you're protecting your assets from inflation that's coming from the new token issuance. So it's kind of this thing about the opportunity cost of not staking, which is pretty high. So that kind of forces everyone to stake by default. From the UX perspective, it's super easy. It's delegated proof of stake. You just pick a validator, stake any amount of tokens. So again, like from if you compare it to Ethereum, where you have to spin off a new validator per 32 ETH, this is actually super, super easy. So going back into my kind of P2P days when we built staking application that allowed in a permissionless way for any user to stake up to 8,000 ETH. There was a lot going on the infrastructure level. So you have to kind of pre-create the keys. So then you have to do all these automations about how you spin off like hundreds of validators potentially per kind of staking click, let's say. It's way, way, way easier in Cosmos. On the other hand, the DeFi space in Cosmos is way less developed, or in the Interchain is way less developed than in Ethereum right now. So this is why liquid staking market for now is really, really small. So it's like between, I would say, 1% and 3% typically in these chains. And this is why the opportunity is huge as well, because most of the assets are now in native staking, not in liquid staking. And yeah, there is a huge market really to work with. So that's what really got us excited about it.
Got it. And can you tell us a bit about the experience of building on top of Neutron? And how does IBC factor in the drop score operations?
Yeah. So Neutron for us is a pretty important part of the whole stack for Drop, because Neutron gives us a pretty unique opportunity to deploy our smart contracts on one chain and then work with assets from multiple different interchain projects. So our smart contracts use interchain accounts so that they can operate a staking transaction on Cosmos Hub, staking transaction on Celestia or on Initia, essentially like any chain that kind of supports this stack. And Neutron is the only chain that supports this kind of functionality for smart contracts. So these are the smart contracts that are really, really cross-chain, which is actually pretty unique. And that enables pretty interesting things from the user perspective. So again, kind of going back to the previous conversation, there was like this part of the conversation about, oh, like people kind of have to care about on which chains their assets are and so on. So what it enables us to build is a user experience when a person really doesn't care from where they stake. So they can have, let's say, Atom that sits on Osmosis chain, and then it gets staked on Cosmos Hub, but the LST is minted on Neutron, and they don't even have to think about it at all. They just click the staking transaction. It's all happening under the hood. They get an LST that is minted on Neutron, and yeah, you can even automate this further and package in this end transaction, for instance, deploying this to a DEX, and that would be just one click. Yeah, so that's pretty amazing, to be honest. What can be done now on this interchain stack, and this is where I think Cosmos, like historically, the stack has been way ahead in terms of interoperability across different chains, and yeah, these are the user experiences that are not really possible anywhere else for now.
And what long-term impact you envision Drop having on both staking and liquidity inside of the Interchain ecosystem?
Yeah, but basically like flipping the stake ratio for liquid staking and native staking. Yeah, where we want to get is like a world of abundant liquidity. Right now, like the DeFi protocols are kind of starving with the liquidity in the chain, because they want all these assets that are now locked in native staking, and yeah, we worked closely together with them to solve this chicken and egg problem. So where we want to get is that as opposed to like a few percent of the staking market, which is really illiquid staking and with yield-bearing assets, to become like a majority of the market, and to make this asset really productive and help them grow the ecosystem. So yeah, the world of abundant liquidity is what we're essentially building.
Yeah, got it. And yeah, because of the nature of the Interchain ecosystem, I'm wondering, like, what's your take on how does Drop model address the potential liquidity fragmentation within like all of these multi-chains?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there are two aspects to liquidity fragmentation. One, I have kind of covered about the UX component to it. So that, yeah, you have your assets that are scattered across multiple chains, and I think with this kind of flexibility that we have with like dealing with IBC through our smart contracts, we can solve this like really easily. The other part, which is, I guess, more challenging, is the fact that this liquidity exists across multiple different chains. And if you're thinking about it from a perspective of a lending protocol, for instance, you rely on the liquidity to optimize your liquidations. And what typically kind of is the fact that they look at the liquidity that exists on their own chain. And I think this is something where like the shift is really happening, where there are either like protocol that build solutions for cross-chain liquidations, or just kind of cross-chain liquidity look, let's say, generally speaking. What we also found very interesting for especially Celestia ecosystem is that every rollup kind of wants their own custom version of an LST. So that they can own it, like they can brand it their way, maybe create some custom kind of custom economics to it and such. And that's also kind of type of liquidation that we can solve through making kind of this kind of hub and spoke, let's say, design, where for DTIA as like drop-based staked tier asset, there would be a liquidity hub on Neutron that would have kind of this base liquidity that they can rely on, but they can launch their own LSTs on the rollups that would be easily swappable back to DTIA, and kind of using this base liquidity that we create for DTIA, and like using, for instance, Neutron's order book DEX that is enshrined in the protocol to make this like really efficient in terms of swaps back into TIA or back into USDC. So I think we are looking at this kind of modular architecture where we have our, let's say, Neutron as a home base, where we build this kind of primary liquidity pools for our assets, and then all the DeFi protocols on the rollups, on the other Cosmos chains, basically everywhere can rely on this as a primary liquidity pool, so that they are not bootstrapping liquidity from scratch. And this is the kind of the biggest problem for them right now, because all of them have to kind of kickstart the DeFi ecosystem and create this flywheel individually. If we give them this way to rely on some liquidity to start with, I think that solves the problem in a very good way. So yeah, that's the idea.
Got it. And let's touch upon a bit on the validator selections, okay? So like, how do you see the liquid staking protocol influencing validator selection?
Yeah, again, going back to your first question, I think it's an interesting comparison, because if you think about how Lido works with node operators, like all of this stake essentially is kind of net new for the ecosystem. So someone stakes with Lido, the stake goes into a new validator with this new 32 ETH, and so there is this kind of very natural, let's say, alignment between Lido and the node operators, because Lido brings them new stake, and that's pretty cool, and they love Lido. In the Interchain, because of the staking ratio of like 60 to 70%, we're dealing with the reality that all the assets are kind of staked with one of the validators. So if you kind of think of it as in kind of naive way, and like you launch a liquid staking protocol, that kind of starts competing with the validators, because you have to take this stake away from them, redistribute across the validators, and so on. So what we kind of anticipated from the beginning is that instead of creating this kind of conflict situation with the validators, we can use that as an opportunity to create deeper partnerships with them. And that also goes back again into my validator days, because I was always let's say, kind of frustrated as a validator. Like, once you get into the validator set with the liquid staking provider, you can't really do much more in terms of how much stake you get. Like, you get 1/10 of the stake, and this is pretty much it. So if you can, I don't know, like BD the hell out of all the market, and you're still getting 1/10, or you can just sit back and relax, you're still getting 1/10. So we're getting the validators this opportunity to basically attract stake using drop as a part of their product. But also what's important is that in Cosmos, I think it's kind of unique as well. All the validators have relationships with their communities, or maybe with the institutional stakers and so on. And by using drop, they can kind of maintain these relationships, so that essentially all the amount of stake that goes through drop can be sent to this particular validator. So I think that's kind of one part of the equation. It's important from our perspective to give validators an opportunity to benefit from drop because it becomes almost like a just value add in terms of their value proposition to the delegators. But I also think because like gradually liquid staking providers in the Interchain can become really powerful in terms of defining kind of what kind of node operators get stake and what kind of node operators don't get stake. It's actually pretty important to be opinionated in that regard and kind of build towards what's useful for the ecosystem in general. So yeah, I think over time what we want to do is to create different tiers of validators based on essentially their contributions to the space and make it as trustless as possible because there are a bunch of on-chain metrics that we're collecting already in terms of like their participation in governance, which is super important in these chains, in terms of their just performance metrics and so on, so that we can create this kind of trustless process of defining tiers for the node operators and giving them giving them an opportunity to get potentially more stake if they find ourselves in the highest tier based on how well they how much they contribute to the growth of the ecosystem and what kind of metrics they have performance-wise.
Got it. And I have one more question, but before I do that, just wanted to check if somebody from the audience have a particular question. Okay, so let me wrap up with the last question. Obviously, at the beginning of our Fireside chat, it was mentioned that you are one of the projects that is also Lido Alliance member. Yeah. And as I will have like a talk later on, and also the opportunity to kind of like get the experience or get a comment from somebody that is a member instead of like somebody that is part of that vehicle. Can you tell us like what are some of in the last like couple of months by you being a member of this alliance, like what were some of the benefits or what are some of the benefits that you're seeing from vehicles like this and ecosystem buildings in this way?
Yeah, I think so. The way we work with the Lido Alliance is largely like working with you guys as an extension to Drop's team. Well, I think one of the important things that we really benefited from is just having access to lots of brains among the Lido contributors to go through some of the important decisions that we were making in terms of how we design the protocol, like working with Easy, for instance, in terms of thinking about validator set and like what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, what really worked with Lido well, and so on. Same thing, working with some of the Lido contributors when we were thinking through the kind of liquidity graph that we're putting together on Neutron and on the other chains around drop assets. Because that's actually one of the super challenging parts of, again, solving this chicken and egg problem for kickstarting DeFi. How do you, like, what are the liquidity pools that you should care about? Do you want to have a lot of liquidity on your kind of USDC path, or do you want to have a lot of liquidity to get back to the underlying asset? Why would people care about this or that? So like reusing all this experience, I think for us, like at this initial stage, that was the biggest lift really. That was just amazing, to be honest. Well, like if you can get access to all these people, it would be stupid not to be honest. The other thing is on the technical side, like getting Lido contributors review the protocol's architecture and so on. Again, like it's a very important stamp of approval, both for us, but also for our partners, because yeah, they know that what they're dealing with is technically robust because there was like this extra eyes looking at it. Yeah, so that's a major boost for us on all these fronts, to be honest. And there's way more coming, but for like in this couple of months, yeah, that was the most important part.
Got it. Well, glad to hear that. So Mitya, thank you once again for joining us, and I hope that you unlock all of the potential of the Interchain. Thanks once again.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks everyone. Cheers.